Now that we've mounted this guy in place and it's locked off with 4 screws this side, 4 screws that side, it's nice, perfectly square. Now we mount this guy, which has been painted and it's all cut and trimmed and holes are drilled and it's looking beautiful. This guy goes in here like this and gets mounted. The panel fits in tightly against right over here. It's flush over here on top of the skin and it's flush over here. What we do here is we put 1 screw right there with a little riv nut on the inside. So you can drill right through here, drill it through the inner frame and put a riv nut on the inside and then a screw over here. So the screw fits this side, one that side. On the front here we actually do 2 things. Is we glue it down using a double-sided tape, that very high strength double-sided tape, and we also rivet it in place. And you might have to do a little bit of trimming right at this point over here just to fit. You can see the transition that the panel has from inside the skin to outside the skin over here. So this is the double-sided tape we use, very high strength tape that lasts forever. We put it just underneath this lip on the panel, on the lip right around the front, and after we've got it perfectly in position, we glue it down. We must remember that before we actually put this onto the lip and before we glue it onto the skin as well, the skin has to be degreased, the lip has to be degreased and cleaned so that it can stick properly, because if we don't degrease it's not going to stick properly. After we've put this on, what we do is put in 9 4.4 millimeter by 10 millimeter dome head rivets, starting right in the middle here, 1 rivet over here, and every 100 millimeters apart, dome head, 4 millimeter rivet, 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 rivet. Same going that side as well. You could put more in if you wanted, you can put 12 in, but usually we put 9 in. So you just drill them, because this guy is now positioned perfectly, and you just drill it right through the lower lip and into the skin. Next thing to do is to fit the front canopy glass or windscreen and actually glue it in place. Get it finally in place properly. The reason we put it on now is because it helps hold this front frame nice and sturdy for us to match up the rear sliding part of the canopy. This guy, you can see, is trimmed like this. This piece is the piece of the glass that actually goes in onto the sides over there. So this goes over like this, and that goes in the side over there. The glass will need some trimming to fit on the frame, to fit on here and fit on here. Basically you want the back of the glass to be perfectly in line with the back end of this frame, and you want the front of the glass to be just along the lip here, not perfectly along the lip here, and it must slide in on the sides of the aluminium in the transition area. You can see where that goes through. What we do, once you've trimmed the glass almost perfectly, you drill a tiny little hole, a little 2.5 millimeter hole, using a very blunt drill bit. The thing is about drilling holes through perspex is that if you don't have the right kind of drill bit, you'll split it as you drill the hole. So what you want to do is you want to take a tiny drill bit, 2.5 millimeter drill, right in the middle here. You drill a hole through the glass and through the and through this glass fiber instrument panel, and right at the top here you put another little hole right through the glass and right through there. And basically that, when you put a cleco in there and a cleco in there, and that cleco there and there holds the glass really nicely in place, and then you can check for an exact and perfect fit. After you've checked that the thing fits perfectly and you're really happy with everything, and you've trimmed it and you've filed it and you've made everything line up perfectly, what we then do is we take a marker pen But what you want to do is take a soluble marker pen so that you can wipe it off afterwards. It'll come off the glass easily. And you mark the inner edge along here, and you mark the inner edge all the way along here, because what we've got to do is we've got to put primer on the frame and on the and on the front of the instrument panel and on the glass. We've got to put primer, two different kinds of primer, and you've got to let that primer partially dry before we actually put them in place and use the Sikaflex, which is a kind of glue, to hold the glass in place. That's all that holds the glass in place, is the Sikaflex. So once you've got the glass in place, you now mark it very clearly where the edges are. You remove the glass again, and you've got these marks, and you mask that off very, very carefully so that we can put this black primer in on just where it's needed, not 1 millimeter more than where it's needed, because that black primer, you can't get it off. If you make a little mess, you know, you have to actually sand that little piece of glass down, polish it. You can get it off here, but it's a sanding process. So you've got to very carefully do the masking. When you're working with the glass, what you do is you peel the plastic back just far enough so that you can actually work on where you've got to work. And you can then actually trim it off too. Don't use a blade because you'll scratch the glass. You need to use scissors. You've now got to mark all the way around where you've marked it, all the way around the glass, so that you know that you have to prime from this edge exactly to that line over there. And actually you want to actually prime it a little bit in from the line, not right to the line, a little bit in from the line, so that you don't land up with too much of a big black piece of primer. You then take striping tape. You very carefully stripe it all the way around, just on the inside of that line, up to there somewhere. And you can see I use this kind of pen because I can easily rub it off. So you now take your striping tape, put your striping tape very carefully on that line all the way around. Then you take masking tape and you mask it off very carefully all the way around. And then if you really want to be precise about it, to make sure that there's no ways that if you have a little drop of primer going into the middle here somewhere, you're not going to get a black spot somewhere. You then close off the whole inside part here so that you can't mess primer by any chance. The other thing is, before I forget to mention, when you're working with primer, you don't want to have it like this and putting primer on this way. You want to have it this way and putting primer on this way. So if the primer runs, it runs away from the center of the glass. There's two kinds of primers we use. This one is for Perspex. It's primer 209N. This one is for fiberglass and aluminium. This is a 206G plus P. So now you've masked this off all the way around. What you do on this piece over here is you must sand it. You can use like a 220 grade sandpaper and sand it off nicely. After you finish sanding the area that you're going to prime, you must degrease it. Now, the degreasing is very important because if there's any trace of silicon anywhere, the primer is not going to stick. It means the Sikaflex is not going to stick. It means the canopy could come off. This is the degreaser we use. It's Sika Cleaner 205, and you do a one-way wipe with this, because if you wipe it two ways like this, you could take this any trace of silicon, you could bring it back again onto the same place. So you use a clean cloth and you do a one-way wipe, and if you put more of this on, use another piece of clean cloth. So the degreasing is very, very important. That's after you've done the sanding. The easiest way to apply the primer is to use a lady's little face cleaning sponges. You take a little face cleaning sponge, you put a little bit of the primer on, and very carefully you wipe it on the area all the way around on the glass, and you do the same on the Perspex. So the Perspex also has to be cleaned, sanded, degreased.